morning. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Another busy business day starts for us on Business Morning. We're live to you from our global headquarters in Lagos, Nigeria. Of course, it's no longer news, but it's still very strong on the news wires, driving conversations on Twitter and, of course, other social media platforms. Fitch Ratings has affirmed the issuer default ratings of 8 Nigerian commercial banks and affirmed the viability ratings of all the banks in Nigeria. However, the long-term foreign currency issuer default ratings of First Bank and UBA was downgraded to B from B+ with a stable outlook. The global ratings agency downgraded the national long-term rating of FBN Holdings PLC to BBB+. Now, Fitch Ratings also cut the Bank of Industry's long-term issuer default rating to B+ from BB- and support rating to 4 from 3. The latest Fitch report expects Nigerian banks to remain profitable this year despite slower asset growth and higher loan impairment charges. 1 week, well, of course, we'll be talking more about that in just a bit. Now, a 1-week trade and investment roadshow involving a select group of key federal and state governments continues today in London, aimed at promoting business opportunities in Nigeria's economic sectors of agriculture, information and communication technology, mining, transport and energy. Well, the event organized by the UK Trade and Investment Office begins with Nigeria Open for Business, featuring key speeches from Nigeria's Trade, Investment and Industry Minister, Mr. Okechukwu Enelama, and the UK Trade Envoy to Nigeria, Mr. John Howell. Nigeria's Aviation, Agri, Water Resources and Transport ministries attending the event will be speaking on how the country plans to link into the global value chains and develop stronger commercial ties with the United Kingdom. Now, the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria has initiated steps to wind down MRS Holdings Limited over its inability to repay about 81 billion naira owed the bad bank. The corporation had in a suit asked the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos allow it to force MRS into compulsory liquidation. According to the corporation, MRS entered into an agreement with it in February 2014 to restructure the debt, which then stood at over 74 billion naira. In the agreement executed by management of the oil company, MRS agreed, among other conditions, that if in the event of a default, all concessions granted under the terms of settlement shall be revoked and the facility called in at the discretion of AMCON. We also have taps on that particular story as well, but focusing more now on the Fitch recent ratings of some Nigerian banks. I'm being joined on the program by Bosun Omofaye, who tees off the show with me to make sense of this. So good morning to you, Bosun.
Good morning, Harriet.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's nice to have you back.
Oh, yeah, it's great to be back.
Exactly.
Time, ease off.
Exactly.
And then you get a bigger, broader perspective of the economic issues that you're tracking.
No, you come back in today and you get this big story on your table.
So let's try to break it down. From B downgraded to B from B+, does this affirm what the Central Bank of Nigeria has been saying all along, that the banks are healthy?
Well, the central banks do stress tests on banks, but no central bank does ratings, so ratings job is different from that of a central banker. So any central bank or reserve bank will say, look, my banks are okay. They will do stress tests. In some jurisdiction, they will publish the entire story and showing you which banks are under stress, what banks are not under stress, like you had recently in the U.S. 28 banks are coping, 2 didn't make the rating, a total of 31 banks done by the U.S. Fed. In this instance, what the Fitch released in the last several hours was to say that, let's start from the big picture, 10 Nigerian banks had their issuer default rating affirmed by Fitch Ratings, and those 10 commercial banks that are covered in this report by Fitch Ratings are UBA, First Bank, GT Bank, Diamond Bank, Fidelity Bank, Union Bank, and FCMB, including Access Bank as well. So these 10 banks, the report says that all these 10 banks are viable. So there's a VR rating. The viability ratings of these 10 banks are good according to, which means that as going concerns, these banks are stable, or are viable, are viable. So that's what this report says, and that includes Wema Bank as well. That makes a total of 10. UBA, Access, Wema, GT, Diamond, Fidelity, Union, FCMB, and UBA. So those are the 10 banks. Now, out of these 10, 8, these Fitch ratings say that 8 of these commercial banks have their availability ratings there, but 2, which is UBA and First Bank, had their ratings cut a notch to B from B+. The outlooks for these 2 banks, First Bank and UBA and FBN Holdings, which is not a bank but a holding company, got a B from a B+. And Fitch Ratings did explain in this report that the reason why First Bank got that from B+ to B was because of the vulnerability issues that First Bank has, and that's why FBN Holdings also got that a notch.
But this doesn't mean that there's an issue with regards to the bank. It just means that it's a positive affirmation of the strength and the viability of the banks before we get customers going into a panic frenzy.
No. I don't think we need to go that far at all, Harriet. What is being released today is that at all times you go to a doctor and it says you need to check your BP, you need to check your sugar intake, you need to sleep a little bit more, you need to rest a little bit more, perhaps within 5-6 hours.
And do a little bit of exercise as well.
A little bit more of exercise, get on the meal and do some workouts. So that means you're healthy, doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow, not today. Could live up to 100, perhaps 120, but keep a watch on your health. And this is really good all the time because we keep checking. The same way we check our bank accounts to be sure if the balance is still the same. As soon as you get an alert, you check if the balance, you go to the net balance to see what you have in the account. So this is really good. But the bottom line here is that these 10 banks, including, and I'm going to mention a few banks, this is not commercial, this is going straight from what the Fitch rating says, that the issuer default ratings of UBA, Access Bank, and Wema Bank are driven, quote, by both their standalone strengths reflected in their viability ratings, these are VRs, and the likelihood of sovereign support reflected in their SRF, which is the support rating floors. In other words, a bank like Wema, Access, and UBA, even though UBA got a notch in downgrade from B+ to B, Fitch Rating says that these banks have 3 strengths. 1, they are standalone strengths. 2, the viability ratings for all the 10 banks. Yes, these banks are good, and Wema Bank, as well as their sovereign support. In other words, if there is a need for the government to intervene, yes, there will be support for these 3 banks. Now, that's what the report says. Okay. That's what Fitch report says. And I'm just going by what the report says and just leave it there because that is what the report says. The report says that if there's going to be anything, there's a likelihood of sovereign support. If there's a likelihood of it. So the central bank would always provide support. And it does this in different ways. Some of these are not known outside. Sometimes the bank help you in the clearinghouse. You wouldn't know. Only the bankers would know. Okay, and as soon as you get a little bit more healthier, they get back support, pull it back again. So that's what we have now. A GT Bank.
Yes, I was just going to ask you.
Yes,
they had their own revised from to stable from negative.
So the outlook, the outlook that Fitch Ratings assigned to GT Bank before was negative. Now that has been moved upward to stable, which much better. That's a long-term foreign currency idea for GT Bank, and the reason was due to, quote, continuing strong earnings and stronger than expected liquidity. So this report is out there, is in the news, is on the wire, and anyone can go there and read it. But the bottom line, as I said, all the 10 banks have their viability ratings, what you call the VRs, confirmed by Fitch Ratings. So none of these 10 banks, which include, and I'm going to read that again, Fidelity Bank, Diamond Bank, UBA, First Bank, Union Bank, FCMB, Access, and Wema.
So what a lot of people now be wondering, and I'm sure we've asked this questions a number of times, why do we always seem to be so particular about what international ratings agencies say about our financial services institutions?
The good thing about this is this, that these are not what you called, I'm trying to find that word, this was not what you called solicited rating. Yes, that's the word for it. These are not solicited ratings. This is what you call unsolicited rating, and it's very simple English. When you solicit a rating, you put all your papers together, you type them, you collate them, and hand them over to a rating agency and say, use these documents to rate me. The unsolicited rating is that the agency go out and do its job on its own and come back and say, this is what we found. So this is an unsolicited rating. The banks, these 10 banks, did not ask Fitch Ratings to do the rating. But lest we forget, to round up the conversation, it's here that this rating that's just been done follows what Fitch Ratings did on Nigeria on June the 23rd. Nigeria was downgraded, and that was quite significant. 2 weeks after that, Lagos State got downgraded as well. And the reason was because the sovereign rating of Nigeria was cut, so Lagos State got its IDR also cut. A review is due first week of September for Lagos State. Now, the Nigerian banks are also getting a rating action from Fitch because at the sovereign level, at the federal government level, we got a rate cut in June. That means that the fiscal authorities, the Nigerian government, therefore ought to move very quickly to make sure that we get our ratings back, because what you do at the federal level comes down to state level and begin to affect your banks and everybody down the line. So this story comes back from the banks all the way back to the government at the center.
Well, Fosun, thank you so much for helping us put that into perspective.
Stick around,
so, yeah, we're going to stick in. You're going to stick around because we've got more to talk about, especially with regards to this AMCON's move to take over MRS Holdings.
Quite a big story out there as well.
That's a story that we're going to be chewing in just a bit. But let's quickly take you through some of the markets we track here for you. We're starting with the interbank money market, and yesterday there was a sizable 75.3% drop in system liquidity from last week's 167.26 billion naira in the market to 41.31 billion. So average rates increased by 361 basis points to 15.28%. We're looking at the board. We see expansions across all the rates. Overnight money is also up of 1, 3 and 6 month NIBOR rates up 13.31, 14.72 and 15.91% respectively. It was a bearish mood at the Treasury bills market yesterday, but let's take a look at the top 4 of the 28 benchmark Nigerian Treasury bills traded on the FMDQ OTC market. For the bill maturing in 21 days' time, that's 21st of, beg your pardon, maturing in 10 days' time, as the bill maturing on the 21st of July, we saw a discount high of 9.95%. For the bill maturing in 17 days' time, we saw a discount high of 9.95% and a value of 31 billion naira. For the 59-day to maturity bill, discount high of 11.25, and we saw a value of 23.25 billion at the end of the day. 747 deals, 199.53 billion naira was realized in Treasury bills. For the bonds, we see investors favoring particularly bonds listed on the short and intermediate ends of the curve. The January 2022 bond was the most actively sought after by investors yesterday, had a price high of 108 naira 65 kobo. The January 2026, February 2020, as well as the March 2024 bonds were also sought after by investors of the 7 benchmark bonds that were traded on the FMDQ OTC market. Now, in 89 deals, 9.2 billion naira was realized for the market. And quickly now, let's take you through what the equities market finished off yesterday. We saw the bears continue to push harder at the market. The all-share index dropped 0.14% to 28,813.51. Market capitalization is at 9.89 trillion naira. So we'll review the markets much later on the show with Rotimi Fakaejo. You can just stay with us. We'll be right back.